Hello everyone, so in today's video we're going to be putting the soffit and fascia on this roof I did. If you've watched me doing this roof on my videos, thank you very much. If you haven't, check it out, they're on my channel in 4 parts. So what we're going to do here is start putting the fascia on. It's a kind of 3 steps really. The first step is preparing the rafter feet and putting on a sub fascia, and then the next part is putting the soffit on, and the last part is putting the fascia on. So I'll quickly show you what we've got to do. Obviously we've got, it's all external corners and internal corners. There's no box ends on here, which is great. So what we've pretty much got to do is set up a line. Got to level out from the brickwork, and then we've got to plumb up to make a cut. The soffit and fascia is just UPVC, and that is all here. We've got this sort of hollow soffit board which we cut to the right width, and then we fix that in, and then obviously the fascia lips on after. What I tend to do, and I'll show you as the video goes on, is I put a sub fascia on, which then enables me to cut and pin the soffit to the underside of it, and then I just clip the fascia on, basically mainly because I work on my own, but also I think it's quite a nice way of doing it. It gives extra rigidity to the back of the fascia. Right, so I'll quickly show you. I've done my calculations, and what we're going to do is we're having about 125mm fascia. It's not that big actually, because the bricklayers have put an extra course, I don't know if you can see over there, put an extra course of bricks above the lintel over there. So if they hadn't put that course on, the fascia would be too big, and they have put it on, so it's a little bit small. So what I've done is I've measured out, here we can, so I've measured out 160mm, so this will be the line that I'll cut here. Then this is 22mm, which is going to be my 4x1 backing, or normally it's a 6x1, but I say because the fascia is not very big, I'm just going to get with 4x1 here. So this line here will be the back of the fascia. So basically what I'm going to do is pretty much each end of the run of roof, I'm going to mark out 160mm, put a plumb line up, then I'll square a line across the top each end, string a line all the way across, and then basically go down the side of each of the trusses and rafter feet with my bevel, marking that plumb line against the line. They'll be nice and straight, and then I can cut them off. Then what I'll do afterwards is come along and just cut off this seat cut here, this level section, and then we can start putting the 4x1 on. Right, let's get going. Just thought I'd quickly mention, I've put my line up here, and I've marked all of these rafter feet. And what I do is I put my line up on a nail, and it's really important that this line doesn't touch any of these rafter tails or truss ends, because if it does, it could push the line up or down and affect how straight it is. Obviously what we want a dead vertical line down there. We don't want a line that's at 90 degrees to the pitch of the roof. I know it's only a tiny detail, but we want a nice straight line down there. So really important that the line is above all of the rafters. And then simply what I do is, if you see here, I just come down with my bevel and just slide my bevel down until it touches the line and put my mark on. Now I know that all of those lines down there are all going to be nice and straight, and when I cut them off, it's going to be a fantastically straight fascia line. So let's get that line off and get those cut. All those rafters are cut off nice and straight now. We've got a lovely straight line down there. What I've done now is just put my level across. I've got this level here. I've done a video on why this nick is out of this level. I might explain it again in this video, but basically what I've done, hook that onto the brickwork there, read it till it's level, and then what I've done is I laid my pencil on the side of it flat, because this, I can't actually show it. I can't do it two-handed, but basically the top of that level, and let's get the way it should be. The top of that level is actually the underside of the soffit, so we want to mark a little bit higher than that when we cut it, so that it doesn't interfere. So they're all marked all the way down there, and now what I'll do is just whiz them off. If this was a shorter run of roof, what I do is just do that each end and probably ping a line across the end there and go in with a bigger saw across the end here rather than down the side. But this is quite a long run, and I don't want to break my chalk line trying to pull it too tight, and it might end up with a bit of a sag on it. So let's whiz those off now. Right, now I've cut all these rafter feet off, and the next job I'm going to do, and sorry if the camera seems a bit far away, but if I put it on these scaffold boards here, I'm walking on, it's likely to tip over because the scaffold board's a bit twisted, so hopefully you can see what I'm doing. What we need to do now is cut the side of this hip off to get it in the right line of the fascia line. So simply what I'm going to do here, I've got my 6 foot level, and all I do here is basically put it up the side of the rafters I've already cut. Look, at least I can get a couple in there. I mean, they're nice and straight. Look, there's a beautifully in line, which we know. Slide that across there, and just put a mark down on the top. Then what I can simply do is get my level and mark a plumb line down. I'm not going to mark a plumb line flat against the hip here, because we know these hips are a little bit twisted, because this isn't the line we want it to be level. That's the line we want it to be level in the run of the roof, the run of the fascia, I should say. So I'm going to hold that in line, hold the level so it's at 90 degrees to the fascia line, and then I'll put that level mark down there. I know it's only small, but it could be quite a bit of difference between it being flat that way, you see. It's not too bad, but it does kink out a bit at the bottom. If that's laid over, that'll give you a false reading. So now what I'll do is simply set my saw over, set this saw over to 45 degrees, and I can just run that straight off. That's it. That's absolutely brilliant. I'll do the same the other end, and then when we bring this, when I've cut all these rafter feet off, and I get around the other side, when we cut, when we do the same against the hip on this side, hopefully that'll give us an indication of how square everything is, because these two cuts should meet nicely in the centre of the hip. So let's get the other end done, the same as this, and then I'll carry on round. So that's all those rafter feet cut off. Really happy with that. It's a nice little job done. I'm going to have to admit defeat on this one, unfortunately. Today is predicted to be one of the hottest days on record here in the UK. There's actually a red weather warning out. So I thought I'd come in for a couple of hours first thing in the morning, but here we are sort of mid-morning, and I don't know what the temperature is, but you can feel it. You can feel there's a different sort of, there's more of a venom to the heat. And actually picking up black-handled tools is getting a little bit uncomfortable. So just quickly, while I mention the tools, when I used to cut these rafter feet off when I first started in my career as an apprentice, we had to cut all these off by hand, and then obviously we got circular saws. And one of the sort of big issues we have with corded circular saws is obviously we'd be dragging, you know, leads all the way down a big long run like this. So what I will say, these cordless saws make this kind of job particularly really much easier. And also these little subcompact 160mm blade tools are absolutely fantastic because they're quite lightweight and you can sort of chuck them around. So as I said, I'm going to make a run for it now because it's super hot. I've actually planned another little job, doing some repairs for a fella on some kitchen cabinet doors that are broken. So I'm going to go and do that. That's inside. Hopefully it shouldn't be too hot and sweaty. So I'll be back on this maybe early tomorrow morning, and we'll continue on from then, and we'll get some of this 4x1 subfascia on. Finally back on the job after a mad day or two, and we're going to get straight on with putting this 4x1 subfascia on. It's pretty good stuff, this 4x1, and all I'm going to do now is pin it to the end of the rafter feet, and I'm going to do it at the same level as the brickwork here, and I'm going to use this level. As I said, it's got a little chink out the end of it, so literally all I do is hook it over the brickwork there, and then when it reads level, I'll then fix a 4x1 on the end of this rafter here. And as I said, I've done a separate video on this, but this lip here is exactly the same thickness as my soffit. So let's get that pinned on. I'm not going to show too much of this because I don't want the video to be too long. So let's get this on, and then we can move on to putting some soffit on. There you go, just really quick and simple. This is 4x1's pretty good, and I just I said here's my level. I just hook it onto the brickwork here, and then I just read it level and then nail it through the end. I did it both ends. You'll notice that I just tacked a timber onto the underside of the rafter there just to hold this until I got just like as an extra pair of hands until I got down. And I just knocked that off, pull that into position, and then what I then did once I've done each end is I then just eye it through to make sure that it hasn't got a sagging, because sometimes the bricks are put into a line and the line can sag. So if you put the level across from the line in the middle of a run, it can sag. So I'm going to whiz round the whole lot now, just get all that on. I'm not going to show it because I think it could be a bit repetitive. So let's get on. That's all that subfascia 4x1 fitted. Let's have a look at it. There, oh, it's like going around the M25. Right, so we've got this soffit to cut next. What I'm going to do is get a measurement. Let's have a look, we can do it now, do it live. The soffit basically needs to sit between the, obviously on the underside, it's coming flush to the front of this subfascia, and I'm going to sit it about 50mm onto that brickwork. So if we have a look there, if we go sort of 50mm onto the brickwork, what are we looking at there? 240, can maybe go 250 for good measure. So what I've got to do now, this is that hollow soffit board, so if we can see that. So I've got to cut this basically 250mm strips all the way down, then that slots in like a tongue and groove. So that's going to be a bit tedious now, cutting that into 250mm strips, but I'll get a load of those cut and then we can start. I'll show you how I fix them to the underside of this subfascia. I've set myself up a little cutting station here. All I've done is just nailed some odd bits of timber onto the side of the rafters. It just means it holds it sort of in a nice position for me, and I've got a lot of these to cut. There's a couple of ways of cutting these. You can cut them by hand, but what I'm going to do is use my circular saw, not set very deep obviously because these can splinter a lot. Not too bad in the summer because this stuff's it's much worse in the winter, it's more likely to splinter. So all I've basically done, I've got my 240mm, we're going to go 240mm, and then I've added this measurement on, which is the distance between the blade and, if I show you here, it's the distance between the blade and the edge of the base here. And then what I can simply do is put my square up on that measurement, which is 330mm, and then I can just run my saw straight down the side of that square, and I know it'll cut at 240mm. So I'm going to get sort of strapped in because I've got a lot of these to cut now, and get a big pile of those, and then we can start fitting them in. So I thought I'd quickly mention, I'm obviously cutting these face side down to reduce chipping out, and it's not too bad. You get a little bit of chipping on the back. It's a little bit on the front as well. You're not going to see this because it's either in the 20mm lip of the fascia at the front or sat on the brickwork on the back. However, I've actually taken out, that just had a 24 tooth blade, sort of fairly rough first fixed blade, and I've actually put my 60 tooth blade out of my track saw in the saw, so that should make a better cut. And also, just quickly, obviously cutting these face down, we need to make sure that there's no grit or anything in any bits of timber that you put or anything that you support your soffit on, otherwise obviously you could scratch the face, so you need to be careful of that. So let's crack on. I've got about another 5 of these to do. Loving it. Right, I've started putting some of this soffit on it. It's going to be quite difficult for me to film it and show you, but really quite simply all I do is put the soffit up until it obviously touches the bottom of this carrier board here, and then literally I can slot one into another one, and then all I then do, look, I can't do it one-handed, is then I just get my stapler and put a staple, bosh, straight in the end of this tongue, and then all I've got to do is, so I'm laying on my back here doing this, all I've then got to do is get the next one, if you can see, just slot it in, slide it down, and then, let's see, I might be able to do it, and then just get that into that tongue, hopefully you can see it, this is, and then, bosh, look, done, that one's fixed. So all I'll do now is just carry on all the way round. I've cut a mitre, can you just see that? I've cut a mitre on this corner. When I get to that corner, I'll cut another mitre, leave probably about maybe a 10mm gap or so, and then we've got a cover trim that goes over that. So I'm going to have to spend a bit of time now, either bent down or laid on my back, fixing all these in. So pretty straightforward. There's a couple of things I did, preparation I did, I should just quickly tell you. I had to nip round and just make sure that there was no snots or high bits on any of the brickwork, and also I've put this batten in, you see. I had to put that batten in first, otherwise I won't get it in, because what that does is that ends up sitting on top of this, the inside edge of this soffit, and we put some sticks down, some little bits of noggins down, and that holds this on top of the brickwork, but I'll come to that in a bit. So we're just going to put this corner trim in. This is a standard sort of soffit joining strip. It's got a sort of fairly big flange on it. This is the top part, this is the bottom part. We leave enough of a gap between the soffits so they can expand and contract, and this obviously covers it over. So these two, where these two corners meet together, I've cut 45 degrees, left about a 5mm gap between the two boards, and all I'm going to do now is just slide that in until it goes over the top of the brickwork and out to the end here, and then I'll just trim that off with the disc cutter. So let's see if we can get that in there. Got to make sure I get it over, not under. Yep, that over there, that's it. Lovely, super. Should just slide in there, look. Lovely, just give it a little tap. And then basically what I do, this is absolutely fantastic for cutting these plastic trims. I just tied that off. Super neat and tidy. I don't know if I can take that off and show you under there. Now you can just see, look, can you see that? How that looks nice and neat and tidy. And then when I bring the fascia over, it'll just lip straight over here. I know that this is down a little bit, but it's only a millimetre, so when that fascia comes round, that'll sit down there perfectly. Look, looks really nice. I know you'll notice that I didn't line up the grooves, but the builder wasn't that bothered, and to be fair, it would have taken a lot longer, so I'm happy with that. So I've got the same to do on an internal corner. I'll go and show you that one. So this is the internal corner. I've got exactly the same to do again. What I've done here though is cut, you can see I've cut 45 degrees out of the internal corner of this trim. So basically all we do, same again, slide it over, make sure it's over the top and under the bottom. Check, check. Yeah, lovely. And we can just slide that in, and that'll go all the way back. That'll go all the way back to the block work. So the brickwork, I've got a little piece of timber here just to help because I don't want to hammer it. So just push that back in. Oh, look at that. That is lovely. So again, you can see that finishes that nicely back to the corner there. Obviously, we know this is flapping up at the minute because we haven't put the timber down on top of it. But again, now I can just bring my fascia around, lip it on, and that'll look really nice and neat and tidy. Excellent. So next job is going to be having a look at some fascia. So there you go, look, all of the soffit is on. That took quite a long time, actually, quite hard on my knees, but that's all on now, and all the corner trims are in, internal and external. So what we can look to do now, I'm not going to put the batten down on top of it and finish that. I'll do that last, just in case anything needs to be altered. I don't think it will, but I'll do that last. It's like a last job. What I'm going to do now is start having a look at putting the fascia on now. I asked for 125mm fascia, but they've supplied 150. It has got an over soffit vent on it, so I think, unfortunately, I'm going to have to rip it down, which is not a particularly nice job, but I'm going to try and rip it down from the back so it minimises the split out. But I'll get that, I'll double check what size I need, and then I'll get that ripped down and we can start putting it on. So yeah, just as I thought, just done a little bit double checking, and this is 150mm fascia, and if this is the top of the rafter line, the tiler likes the fascia to stick up about 50mm above the rafter line, just so it kicks that first tile up, because obviously it's not on a tile and batten below it. This is about, if you bring this roof line down, that's about where the raft would be if this sub fascia wasn't on. So if we have a look here, you can see where my thumb is. I haven't measured it, but that's about 50mm from my thumb to the top of the fascia there. So we have got to accommodate, because this is not a vented soffit, we've got to over fascia vent. So here's the over fascia vent, and as you can see, just as I suspected, it's about 20mm. So what I'm going to have to do, unfortunately, it's not a particularly nice job, is I'm going to have to reduce this down by 20mm. So not the end of the world. I think what I'm going to try and do is set up my saw, maybe even make a little base for it or something, so I can just run it along the back here, and then we won't be chipping out the front. So I'll set up now and we can get that ripped down and we can start getting some of this fascia on. Just quickly show you what I've done to the saw. I've made a bit of a modification. Some of you tool purists might be appalled, but I've drilled a couple of holes in the aluminium base here, and I've put a little guide down the side. It's 25mm and it's about 15mm in depth. So what that's going to enable me to do is basically, it's like a guide, so I can just run that, look, see that, just run that straight down the top of the fascia, and I'll get a nice clean cut and no chipping out on the front. You'll also notice that I've got the blade right machine here, and that wasn't by accident, because what this does is throws all the chips away from you, not down into your socks. So look at that. Lovely. Really happy with that, look. Got a really nice one. That literally is razor sharp. Got to watch my fingers on that, but not split out or anything, because I'm cutting it from the back. Only took a couple of moments to make that bodge up guide on that saw, but that's going to make that so much easier. So I can run those all down now, and as I've said, I think about 3 or 4 times now, start putting the fascia on. Right, so it's finally time to start fitting some of this fascia. What I've done is I've cut this fascia to length, and I've put it up on some pins on this. We're doing this hip end first. What I've done, if you can just see there, look, is I've lined up the end of the fascia exactly with the end of the sub fascia going around the other side. So it's exactly, I know it's exactly in the right place. And what I've done also is I want to work out exactly where my nails go in this sub fascia. In this case, I've measured it so I get a nice decent spread, and that ends up being 35mm down and 105mm down. Now what I'm going to do here, I find it nice and easy, because I like my nails to be all nice, straight and uniform, is basically at each point there's a rafter I know that I'm going to fix there. So what I do is at that point I just put my tape on the top, and you might not be able to see this, apologies if you can't see it fantastically, because I've had to put the camera on a dodgy scaffold. So I just basically measure down, I put a little dot, 35 and 105. Now, because I've put my tape exactly in line with where this rafter is, I know that those nails are going to go into the end of the rafter feet. But also what I've done, and it's quite subtle, is I've just moved it over so these lines are not exactly in the centre of that rafter, because what I don't want to do is run the risk of putting my polytop nails into the 2 nails I've put in this sub fascia. So basically all I'll do is I do that all the way along, mark down 35, 105 at the point where the rafter is, and then I know my nails are going to be nice and evenly spread across the length, but they're also going to be nice and evenly spread across the width. So I'll just do a few more of those down here without tipping the camera over, look. So there we go. just a dot, 35, 105, here we go. Oh, tape's gone. 35, 105, I'll keep going down here. You won't be able to see me now. 35, 105. Let's just see if I can change the angle of that camera a bit. Might be able to see a little bit more of what I'm doing. Oh gosh. Right, that's better. Yeah, so here we go. 35, 105, 35, 105. There we are. So, put that pen away. So if I carefully unplug you now, what you can see, look, is I've got a mark for my nail holes just off centre of each rafter, look. So that's the same all the way down. And what I'll do now is I'll just clip that back in there if I can. Yeah, now what I've got is I've got some 50mm. These are 50mm polytop nails. They've got a plastic head on them, and all I do is make a start in those dots I've made. Just start those nails in there. I'll do that all the way down. Right, so hopefully you can see now. You can't just see on this end that I've put a little tab on the return so I can butt the fascia straight to it. So really is, I hope you can see me now, really easy. And this is the beauty of doing this system when you're working on your own. Just pull the fascia up, look, lip it on, push it tight to stop that end. Just lip it on, look, make sure that's going. Lip it on and put a tack in. Just make sure it's where it needs to be each end. Yep. Yeah, look at that, lovely. So as I come down, I just lift it up and nail it in. Beautiful. Absolutely fantastic. Absolute winner. There, pull it up nice and tight to the soffit. Look at that. Absolutely brilliant. Now just go back. Now the bottom ones. Carefully with the hammer here because we don't want to miss. Oh, it's lovely. Done it. Look at that. Absolutely brilliant. So that is now nailed on there tight. All the nails are neat and tidy, and we know it's tight up against the soffit. So I've got about 8 more lengths to do. Let's have a quick look underneath, look, so we can see down there, look, how that looks super neat and tidy down there. So that's going to look great when that's all done. So yeah, about another 8 to do. Here's that tab I told you about that I put on. So we'll just knock him off, and I'll just show you what I do with these corners. I don't put a polytop nail in these corners. What I actually do is whip the head off. So you can just whip the head off these polytops, look, with your, if you can see that, you can just whip the head off with your hammer, and then all I do is put a nail in behind. And those will sit flush, nice behind. There's a corner capping that goes on here, which I can either glue on or put some smaller pins in. So yeah, that's just how I finish those corners off. So I've got that whole run to do now. that's all of that fascia on down there. Just a couple of things to say. Have to make sure that you leave an expansion gap, obviously, because this plastic does expand and contract. It's not a particularly hot day today, so hopefully that's in about the middle of its expansion. What I'm going to do, although I haven't done this fascia all the way around, I know I was going to do the fascia first and then come back and put this batten on. I've got a really nasty feeling it's getting towards the end of the day today, and despite roofers and builders asking me when I'm going to be finished, I give them a day and they always take a day off it. What I'm going to do is just put this batten just goes into position here. Look, so I'll just do it flush with the back of my soffit there. I know that's in roughly the right place. And what I'm going to do is cut some sticks down onto here. So I'll quickly do that because I've got a feeling tomorrow I'm not going to be able to finish this video in the way that I wanted to. Hopefully I've shown, you know, that cutting the rafter feet, putting the subfascia on, putting the soffit on, putting the fascia on, and putting this on as well. I may not get invaded tomorrow, but if I do, at least I can explain this bit without, you know, loads of noise and people shouting at me. So batten's in position. I've cut all these little sticks, look, and they go up the side of the rafter. I push down. As I nail them, I push down onto that batten there and fix it into the side of the rafter. I do that all the way along. I just say we have to be really careful when using nail guns. It might look like my thumb was quite close to it, but my thumb was pushing down on top of that stick and the fixing was at least 50 or 60 mil away from it, and I was angling it down slightly, so we have to be very careful when we get hands anywhere in nail guns. But that's all nailed up nice and tight now, so basically that's it in terms of soffit and fascia. Gives you an idea of how I fit it and the process I go through. The fascia is now pinned nicely to that subfascia, and that's given that additional strength. Obviously the soffit is fixed up to that subfascia, so we know that's nice and level, and with that batten on the back pushing down through the rafters, through that stick, we know that that's rock solid down on top of the brickwork now. So I hope there's other bits and bobs like there's some cover caps to go over the joints, and there's some corner cover caps, and hopefully I'll be able to show you a couple of those tomorrow if I don't get too inundated with people. Just quickly show you where these two fascias meet on an external corner. I just have to cut away a small section. That's about 35 mil, which is the same distance as the lip here from the face back. So that just allows that to sit flush in the same line, and then the cover cap covers the whole lot. Just thought I'd show you that, look. So, as predicted, the roofers did turn up, and it turned into a bit of chaos. There was lots of noise and banging. I did finish off a few other bits and bobs. I hopefully put a few extra little bits of footage in there showing me how I did that. There is lots of different ways of doing soffit and fascia. This is the way I do it. It suits the way I work, which is mostly on my own. It's not my favourite material to do soffit and fascia out of, being a carpentry purist, but it really does do what it says on the tin. You know, you fit it and you can pretty much forget it. It only needs a small amount of maintenance each year. So I hope you've stuck it to the end of this video, and if you have, thank you very much, and I hope you found it interesting, and thanks for watching.